Welcome back. The next question is, how can we evaluate and improve our collaboration? So collaboration evaluations are a really integral part of participatory research. No collaboration is perfect. Leaders may not always recognize problems, and certainly we may not know how to solve them. And even strong collaborations need to frequently reevaluate what's working. I can tell you, I've been doing CBPR for over 25 years and have been leading Aspire for over 16 years. And still, there is never an evaluation that doesn't come out with something that we need to do differently. Something at times it's little and no big deal. Sometimes it's major. It's really, really important to be a learning organization. Evaluation is really meant as a form of continuous improvement. It's not meant to prove that you're doing a good job. You're not doing this in order to publish and say, wow, we're fantastic. It's also not meant to grade individual people or the work they're doing. It's not an assessment of, oh, did I do my job right? Really, the point is to learn how to keep getting stronger as a group. It's a really important component in power sharing and building and maintaining trust. So lots of different evaluation methods. Like everything, there's no one right answer. You have to fit what works for your group. You can do external evaluations or internal evaluations. For the most part, in most of our projects, we've done internal evaluations, but I have been involved in projects where they've hired external evaluators to come and really assess the partnership from outside of the group. Sometimes we do formal evaluations, sometimes it's informal. We often use a combination of both ongoing little evaluations and then either time dependent, as in yearly, every 6 months, or key milestone evaluations. You may think about whether you want to have just discussions in real time versus if you want to actually have separate data collection and analysis, whether you want to get qualitative data, quantitative data, or use mixed methods. Think about the level of it. And there's no right answer. For our projects, we tend to use a mix of evaluation tools. And really, it's you and your team members together can think about what's going to work best for your specific situation. For example, I always thought that external evaluators would be easier because then you don't have to tell anybody to their face. But I've had, not Aspire, I've had other community partnerships feel like they didn't really want an external evaluator because they didn't want to, tell their business to somebody from the outside. Other times, it's actually been really helpful to have somebody come in from the outside and give a fresh take to what you're doing. So, things to consider. Who should lead the evaluation? Who should be included? Are you going to be getting information or asking everyone on the team to be included? Are you only asking for information from community partners, from co-investigators? What about your consultants? What about people that are slightly less integrately involved? And then how much privacy or anonymity do people want? And how can you assure that that's actually the case given small teams? Sometimes people want a lot of privacy and anonymity, but you don't want to pretend that it's going to be truly anonymous when in a small team, it might be easy to guess who's saying what. So we try to be really clear with people to make sure that they understand the limitations of privacy and anonymity. Who's collecting or compiling the data? How are they doing that? How do you follow up to get more in-depth feedback if needed? How do you present findings or make changes? And what do you want to focus on or learn in a particular evaluation? So as I said, we use a combination of things with Aspire. One is to just get that ongoing little feedback. It's not necessarily earth-shattering, but kind of making little tweaks along the way really ends up preventing bigger problems. It also helps partners understand, you really feel like, yes, in fact, you're listening and you're trying to make changes. So at the end of each meeting, we try to do a keep change exercise. If we have time, we'll do a little 5-minute discussion at the end of the meeting where we simply ask, so, what should we keep doing for today's meeting? What would you like to change next time? And sometimes that's a fun little discussion. we don't always have time for that. Regardless, we always give a link to an anonymous survey at the end of each meeting. And there we just have, think about today's Aspire team meeting. What went well? What would you like to keep doing? Did you experience any discomfort or triggers from the meeting format or that discussion? How could things have gone better? What would you like to change to improve future meetings? Is there anything else the Aspire directors or staff can do to improve how we collaborate? And then optional, if you want someone to follow up with you about your responses here, please write your name. Okay. Sometimes there won't be any responses to a meeting. Sometimes we'll get a few responses. Sometimes it will make a big difference. Milestone evaluations are much more in-depth evaluations. We choose to do them at key milestones as opposed to on a particular schedule, because sometimes they really help us understand kind of and put closure to a particular stage of the project. Of course, the content varies on the stage of the project. So we might be asking very different questions if we've just finished creating survey materials than if we've just finished interpreting data or something else. We often use Likert style questions, like how much do you agree or disagree to particular statements, followed by essay boxes asking people to explain the answer. And we really try to emphasize that the essay boxes are more important than the Likert style questions. And then, of course, we have open-ended essay boxes for actual recommendations. People can choose to do those online in a self-administered way versus in an interview with a research assistant or a student. We purposefully actually have the interview be somebody who's as low on the totem pole as possible, because sometimes we feel it's easier for people to give critical feedback to somebody who they don't feel carries a lot of power than to try to tell one of the team leaders or even the project manager or a community project lead that what they're doing may not be working. We also have, again, a research assistant or student compile and summarizes the data so that, for example, I, as a principal investigator, am not looking at individual comments to give an extra level of privacy if needed. Now, that being said, people often will name their comments, even their critical comments, or again, sometimes it's fairly easy to guess who's bringing in a particular point. And it's not meant to end with just this like survey. Again, this isn't like research where we've just said, oh, okay, this worked, this didn't work. The point is continuous improvement. The point is actually collaborating to make it better. So usually I, hopefully along with the community project lead, will often meet with individual team members who've expressed concerns to better understand the concerns and to really start brainstorming solutions. Now, it's really important that these meetings aren't set up in a way that makes the person feel like, oh my gosh, they got in trouble for saying something negative. It's really try to emphasize that this is, we need their help. We want to better understand how we can do this better because this is really, really important feedback. And I want to work with them to figure out a better solution. And sometimes we've ended up with really, really important, innovative changes that have come out from those follow-up meetings. We often then give the whole team kind of a report with the summary findings as well as the recommendations, and then we'll have group discussions around the recommendations, refining them, figuring out next steps, and so forth. We have a sample key change survey as well. I wrote that wrong, as well as a sample milestone evaluation available on our website. So take-home points. It's really important to encourage continuous evaluation and improvement in all projects, but especially in participatory research projects. Try to get away from the notion of evaluation as a grade or a way to prove about what a good job you're doing. Make sure to listen to concerns and work collaboratively with your team members to address them, to come up with better ways of doing this. Use this as a really special opportunity to learn and grow. Ultimately, making concrete changes can go a long way to building and maintaining trust. It's not just words, it's the actions that matter, and it's making those concrete changes in response to concerns that matters most. Thanks again to the full Aspire team and all the lessons I've learned from our various evaluations, as well as to AR